Now, the binding of those protons and neutrons is a very, very strong force. It's over a very short range, okay? And the Coulomb strength is has this constant right here times the charge of each one divided by the distance squared. And since this is an extremely small number here, right, a negative number there means it becomes a positive number up here, right, when you're talking about the factors. So this is like 10 to the 15th squared in the numerator here for that overall force. That's a very, very strong proton-proton force that's involved there. And depending upon where you are in the periodic table, as you get to higher and higher levels, the maximum stability for the nucleon number has a certain value. And so there's a band of stability associated with this. When you get outside that band, what's going to happen is you are going to have something that's a nucleus that is not stable. So any number that's greater than 83 is unstable. Those that are at special numbers, 2, 8, 20, 28, 50, 82, 126, these have added stability, okay? You'll notice that those just happen to be the atomic numbers of your noble gases. The pairs of protons and pair of neutrons add stability to them. Odd number both protons and neutrons, less stability. So a neutron-proton ratio for added stability is 1 to 1 in isotopes up to 20 protons. 1 plus increasing for increasingly heavy isotopes. So you need more. The more you have there, beyond this point right here, you have to have more neutrons present for nuclear stability. Here's an example of that alpha emission. This is radon going to polonium plus the helium ion, right? So this is -4 up here, -2 down here to there. This is, you can be stopped simply by paper. It's okay. So you can stop any type of alpha emission strictly by stopping with a sheet of paper. Now, the beta emission is the expulsion of an electron. And so you'll see that you don't have a change here. You do have a change down here. So there's no change in this right here, but there is a change in terms of electrons. Okay? This changes to this is a higher number here, so it's short 1 electron. And this right here will penetrate 1 centimeter of aluminum. So 1 centimeter of aluminum is not very dense. It doesn't take very much to stop this. Okay, if you have a thick pad of paper, it will stop this. Gamma decay, this emission of high energy photons, and this takes 5 centimeters, or essentially 2 inches of lead. 2 inches of lead, or about 3 feet of earth, will stop a gamma emission. So this right here, these remain the same, but this is activated and it gives off high energy gamma rays. So these are the different ones. More than 83 protons, you alpha emission. Neutron to proton ratio is too large, you get beta emission. Excited nucleus, you get gamma emission. Neutron to proton ratio too small, you get other types of emission, so it loses a proton, no mass change. Okay? And this is a radioactive decay series. You have uranium up here at the top, and it breaks down to thorium. Here you have uranium going to thorium, and then this one right here. And these right here are the, this is U-238, this is U-235 right here. This is thorium, and that's going to be 230 thorium 235, and this is thorium 232. And then here you have lead in the different ones. Lead is when it gets to lead, it's stable for the most part. Lead can, with a beta emission, go up and then drop back down and then drop back down again. So here there you can see what it's doing on the different ones. So one radioactive decay nucleus leads to a second, which decays to a third and keeps on going. Then what you have to do is you have to figure out, okay, how long does one of these decays take? That's called the half-life. I think that's on the next slide. Right here. The time for 1/2 the radioactive decay sample is the half-life. So whatever the amount is of this, it will be half that in this many years. So tritium decays in 12.26 years. Carbon-14 is 5,000 years. Strontium, 28 years. Uranium, 4.51 times 10 to the 9th years, right? So that's a fairly stable molecule right there. U-235 is much less. So the example that they give is 1 kilogram of an unstable life if it has 1 day of a half-life. So after 1 day, instead of 1 kilogram, it'll have 500. After 2 days, this will be cut in half again to 250. After 3 days, this will be cut in half to 125, and it'll keep on decaying every single day. Okay, and so the decay series has a wide half-life variation, and it shows what the variation is on the different ones here, and this gives you some examples here. You can probably blow this up and see that in more detail, how long it takes between each one of the steps. How do we measure radiation? Usually it's a Geiger counter or something that detects the ions produced by radiation. There's also a scintillation counter. This relies upon the flashes of light produced as radiation strikes of phosphor. Zinc sulfide is the phosphor used in TV picture tubes. And so you could use something like that to help detect radiation. And how much radiation is there? Well, depends upon how you measure it. These are all the different units. The Curie, and these are the most common ones in civilian use. The rem, the millirem, for these different ones. Okay, these are the two most common ones. The old ones used to be measured in Curies. Not too many were measured, but now the official one is the becquerel now. Okay, and so that's why they show what the conversion between these two is. Your older textbooks will have the Curie units, okay, and all of them will have the rem and millirem. So human, and this right here gives you what the relative levels of these, what happens in these level doses. Just walking down the street in New York City with all the background radiation coming from the granite in those buildings is 0.13 rems for an average annual exposure. This is the upper limit that you'd want to have for annual exposure. This right here is for observable effects and reduced red blood count, and red blood and a higher white blood count. This is fatigue and other symptoms of radiation sickness occur here. And then this right here is definite radiation sickness, bone marrow damage, possible leukemia. Down in here, what you're doing, other symptoms include diarrhea and hair falling out, and all those sorts of things happen at this level right here. This is a lethal dose, 50% of the individuals. This is a lethal dose, 1,000 rems is a lethal dose for everything. Radiation exposure, natural is 100 to 500 millirems per year. Cosmic radiations is one source, Earth's residual radioactivity, medical x-rays, TV, Yes, just TV. And also all of your little electronic devices as well can cause some of that. DNA disruption, free radical production, threshold versus linear exposure models. Okay, this is the threshold of damage right here. So you can keep on going. Once you get this point, it's going to start increasing. Okay, this is increasing the biological damage. It goes through this sort of a linear exposure. This is not it's almost nothing detectable up to a certain point. Okay, this is where you should really be worried about. But be cognizant of the fact that you are accumulating something all the way in here as well. Okay, so it's going to happen in here, but at this point right here is where the damage of the different varieties that they talked there will occur. Now, nuclear energy is the interconversion of mass and energy, according to Einstein's very famous equation, E equals mc squared, where mass is the m, speed of light. So the energy required to break a nucleus into individual protons and neutrons. And the binding energy to nucleus. The iron 56 is one of the most stable nucleus right here. So you have fusion reaction can take place here. You can bind them together. Or you can have fission reaction taking place here, breaking them down. So you can either break them down in this manner, or you can pull them together in this manner. Either one will get you eventually to the ones in this range up here. So nuclear fission is splitting heavy nuclei into lighter ones, and it's possible for a chain reaction. Once you start getting one to generate ones that hit these three balls, each of these will generate to hit the ones outside of that. And the critical mass is when, once this starts, it doesn't stop until the explosion takes place. Okay? So a controlled fission reaction is one where you have the rods going in and out to absorb some of these neutrons so they don't hit some of the other ones that are present in the reactor. Nuclear power plants rely upon controlled fission where these steel rods contain the fuel rods. And so it's a very intricate matter. It's balancing and making certain you have the containment. And it's not just one level of containment. You got several different levels with the cooling water and all of that sort of thing involved. And the spent rods, they still do contain some fissionable material. It's going to degrade slowly. And the key question is where to dispose of them. That's the one thing that's not settled. Nuclear reaction is very safe if you have good engineering, not Russian engineering. Unfortunately, the French are some of the best right now because we have given up all the advantages that we had in all of our years of experience by foolishness on the part of the greenies. Nuclear fusion, it's less massive nuclei forming more massive nuclei. This is what's happening in the sun and the other stars all the time. Requirements for high temperature, high density, and sufficient confinement time. And that's what's happening to generate the light from the sun. To control that here on Earth, they have been looking at different methods of magnetic and inertial confinement. But what you have to do is you have to start with a fusion reaction to trigger. You have to have a fission reaction to trigger the fusion reaction. The fusion requires to get the high temperature and the high density, right? So that is what is needed to do this. And this, you can see, becomes a sustaining reaction when you get to that point. And that's the end of the things on nuclear reaction. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll call it a day. Well, no, you've got your lab to do.